village and every hamlet, from every state and every city. We will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
I never heard King say one thing when that camera was on about white folks, and another thing when it was off. He never called them honkies. He never called them rednecks. He always had the same love. Now, I'm talking about when just he and I in a room talking. I'm cussing and calling him everything I can think of and blah, blah, blah. And he never left that spirit of love.
Governor, thank you very much. And don't get hurt yourself. Don't get run over, see? Thank you very much, Governor.
George Wallace, Democratic governor of Alabama, saw the growing civil rights movement as part of a communist conspiracy.
The Communist Party USA has been alert to capitalize on every possible issue or event which could be used to exploit the American Negro in furtherance of party aims. In its efforts to influence the American Negro, the party attempts to infiltrate the legitimate Negro organizations for the purpose of stirring up racial prejudices and hatred. In this way, the party strikes a blow at our democratic form of government by attempting to influence public opinion throughout the world against the United States.
In the name of national security, Attorney General Robert Kennedy gave the FBI permission to tap the telephones of Martin Luther King and his colleagues. J. Edgar Hoover, chief of the FBI, was convinced that the civil rights movement had been infiltrated by communists.
Hoover hated King. Hoover is close enough to the South to be in the Southern culture. And in that society, there was a real sense of belief, a religious belief, a political belief that there was no such thing as equality between blacks and whites. Hoover had coverage by agents listening to the wiretap 24 hours a day. We had scuttlebutt and rumor and about his personal life. We didn't have facts to show that King was a communist.
In the build-up to the 1964 election campaign, President Kennedy took his wife on a ceremonial visit to Dallas. There, he met his death. Americans tried to find outsiders to blame for their president's killing. There was a fear that the assassination might be the start of a communist attack on the United States.
This is a sad time for all people. We have suffered a loss that cannot be weighed. For me, it is a deep personal tragedy.
On the very night Johnson became president, when we flew back from Dallas on November 22nd, 1963, I was one of 3 people who sat with him in his bedroom. And that night, I learned he had sketched out the Great Society of what he wanted to do. As he said, now that I got the power, I aim to use it.
This administration today, here and now, declares unconditional war on poverty in America. And I urge this Congress and all Americans to join with me in that effort.
In one of the richest countries in the world, millions of people were living in poverty, without decent housing, without health care, without education. Amongst blacks, unemployment was 9 times that of whites. Central to Johnson's vision of the Great Society was the abolition of racial discrimination. In July 1964, Johnson signed the Civil Rights Bill.
He uses nearly 100 pens to affix his signature and date. Souvenirs go to Republican leader Everett Dirksen and Democratic whip Hubert Humphrey. The president seems to have mastered the art of just touching each pen to the paper. Integration leader Martin Luther King receives his pen, a gift he said he would cherish.
Attention all bases, attention all bases. This is Iron Hand, this is Iron Hand. This is a SAC alert.
The Cold War military buildup continued. The United States remained on high alert against a Soviet nuclear attack. It prepared to counterattack on an unimaginable scale.
Air Force 2, this is Jackson Control. This is a Zebra alert. Switch over to tower frequency. Jackson Tower, Air Force 2-2. Are we clear to taxi for takeoff?
An increasing minority were questioning the cost and the effect on American life.
They had the pride of billions and billions and billions and trillions of dollars of investment, trillions of dollars of war materials, secrecy, perquisites, pride, an incredible conspiracy of silence surrounding what was supposed to be a democratic nation.
The defense industry was a generous employer. The Pentagon presented the military machine as the defender of the American dream.
The day begins and gives new meaning to the words of Walt Whitman. Everything comes out of the people, everyday people. The people as you find them, and leave them. People. People. Just people.
Life in this neighborhood was very, very good indeed. We all had jobs. We knew we were going to keep them. We all owned our homes. We were all white, middle class, approaching middle age. The children were very much the same size and shape. 4th of July, all the moms made their potato salads and their cold cuts. It was all out there in the middle of the cul-de-sac on picnic tables. We blocked off the end of the cul-de-sac. There was no traffic. The kids would play, and they'd have their streamers and their tricycles, you know, all decorated, and we would have a fine, fine time on the 4th of July.
Throughout 1964, Johnson was on the campaign trail to get himself elected president and to build the Great Society. His Republican opponent was Senator Barry Goldwater of Arizona. He voted against the Civil Rights Bill. Goldwater promised to get tough with the Soviets. He denounced Johnson's Great Society as creeping socialism.
The message of our campaign is clear. It's this: stop the spread of socialism at home and communism abroad.
The American people needed more convincing. Goldwater was heavily defeated. On the Berkeley campus of the University of California, dissent flourished.
There had been a long tradition in Berkeley, going back many, many years, of distributing literature and giving political speeches and setting up tables promoting your political groups right there on the campus grounds. An edict came down which said that all of that must stop.
The students borrowed the tactics of the civil rights movement. They organized strikes and sit-ins. In the confrontation with the students, the police became increasingly heavy-handed. The press and the public had little sympathy.
Some of the press said that 49% of us were communists, and so you saw people wearing buttons saying, I'm part of the 49%, which was a big deal. You see, this is a very important turning point because I was terrified of being called a communist. absolutely terrified. I was going to be a public school teacher. This could end my career. To put that button on, to sing songs that we made up, like there are 5,000 students in the plaza. The microphone's loud, it's drawing a crowd. I'm sure that the rules say it's just not allowed. But to sing that, it would stick in my throat because it was terrifying to be thought of as a communist.
American ideas of political freedom were now being extended into the personal realm. The pursuit of happiness seemed incomplete without the exercise of sexual freedoms. The free enterprise system richly rewarded the adroit merchandising of sexual fantasy.
Good evening. My name is Vera. Good evening. And I'm going to be your bunny tonight.
Philosophy that I've always, that I grew up with and that I espoused in the editorial series was really personal freedom, political freedom, economic freedom, with the emphasis on the personal. The notion that we indeed did and do own our own minds and bodies, and that anything from church or state that limits that is inappropriate and inconsistent with the pluralistic society that America is supposed to be.